G'day friends, so this one's gonna be the first video in my new series, Economic Restrictions for Weaker Sections. Now there are many reasons to name this series Economic Sanctions on Weaker Sections, which could make a separate subject for another video. But just to give you an idea, I just want to say one thing, that it doesn't matter whether you are living in a socialist state or a capitalistic state. The basic fact is that for the majority of the population, opportunity is not equally and freely available. There are many ways of restricting the amount of opportunities available for people to progress, for the kind of opportunities available, as well as who actually gets to avail those opportunities. There are many levels at which this selection process works, but that's for another video. This video is not to dwell on those issues. In this video, I'm specifically concentrating on one thing, one aspect of industrial relations in 21st century. It's a new form of industrial action, and it is what has already been done in one place, Argentina. Possibly there might be others, but I wouldn't go into too much detail of how that happened, but I'll just give you some basic ideas what happened. Now, Argentina, or Latin America as such, was one of the first places on this planet to lose its industries to outsourcing. Now we all know what outsourcing is. Outsourcing is when you move, when a business organization, when a corporation decides that producing its products at one location is more expensive because of the labor rates at that place, and decides to shift its production facilities to another location on the globe, where production costs are cheaper because the labor available over there is cheaper. Argentina, or Latin America, was one of the few places to lose its work in that fashion. However, Argentinians did something remarkable in those circumstances. Perhaps you can Google about the takeover movement in Argentina, or search for Xenon, one of the industries which was rescued and by the workers taking over the management. Now, to cut the long story short, the workers took over the management of units which had been shut down, and they started running those industrial units by themselves. Now, it wasn't an easy thing to do. Not only there were legal hurdles involved, it's surprising to know that a working population is the strength of the nation, and an empowered workforce gives strength to a nation. A stronger business community of a nation makes a nation stronger. Yet the political establishment took 10 years to take legislative measure to assist them in any ways. In fact, when this movement started, which was towards the end of the 20th century, about 1999 2000s. So as I said, Latin America was the first one to lose jobs to outsourcing. So at that time, all sorts of hurdles that could have possibly been thrown in the way of the workers were thrown in there, and there was a reason for that. The business establishments didn't want this movement to succeed, because a resounding success of this movement would have meant similar movements would have occurred at other locations, notably United States, which was the next one to lose its production jobs to outsourcing. Now, one thing which would surprise you is that the global recession that we have been recently through, it has actually progressed along with the decline in production facilities in a nation. Latin America was the first to suffer recession because it was the first place to lose production jobs. America and Europe were the next ones, because they were the next ones to lose production jobs. And Australia is now sort of heading towards a recessive phase, because production jobs are leaving Australia as well. Now, there may be a lot of talk about Chinese economy slowing down and the demand for Australian ore, mineral ores dying down, but I would take that with a pinch of salt because demand for Chinese product hasn't decreased anywhere. So there's no reason for Chinese economy not to need minerals from Australia. And besides, I always say, and I've always maintained this, that mineral export is not what makes a nation strong. A nation's real strength is its production jobs, what you produce, what you export from your nation as a product rather than as a mineral. Now that said and done, now the thing is that Fords and Holdens, Mitsubishi was one of the first car manufacturers to leave Australia. Now Fords and Holdens, a company which has been considered by Aussies as their own. Aussies take pride in being the manufacturers of Holdens. Now Fords and Holdens are the two companies which are in the process of leaving Australia. They probably might have wound up most of their um, activities, but they are in the process of closing down their production in Australia. Now the question is, can Aussies do what the Argentinians did and take over the management of those plants and do production on their own? And why just Australia? Why should this not happen everywhere in the world? Now, of course, it's easy to say why that this should happen everywhere, and it's easy to see that it's in the interest of the workers, which forms for majority of the population compared to business community, which is smaller. It's easy to say, but there are real issues, there are real problems with this thing. The first is obviously running such a worker managed corporation, simply because you not only have to reorganize the internal structure of the company, but you have to run it at a lot lesser wages than what you were probably getting paid by the business corporations. Perhaps there are a lot more issues regarding that, which could possibly be only known or heard from companies like Xenon, which have been rescued by the workers. And I would also mention over here that the reason companies like Xenon and many other companies have been reasonably successful in what they did, and they're still going strong, even though they may not be as great as the workers may not be in as great position as they were before the recession, but they're still surviving and they're still living good lives. Now, the reason you don't hear about these things, you don't read eulogies about these things in your media, is your media itself, the mainstream media itself, is controlled by the big corporations. They don't want these things, the word about these things to spread, because a spread of information about this will motivate people in other places to take similar actions, and that would mean the businessmen will lose their investments. Even though they don't actually lose their investment, they just lose their freedom. Now, they don't lose their investment because worker takeover does not mean that they have lost their industry. They still own the factory, they still have the legal title, and this is something what I want to address in this next part of the video, when I talk the legal issues, the second major issue that faces takeover companies. Now, the owners still have the legal title, and if the workers decide that they want to purchase that industry, they have to first pay off all the debts that company owns to people, and then they have to give the market price, fair market price, to the owner. But the only problem with this thing is workers are not allowed to pay the market price that the owner was getting when he was winding it down, but they have to give the owner the new price, the latest price, which would be a much better price because the workers have made that industry working again. Now, this is something where legislation should have dealt better in favor of workers. And before that, the court should have given a bit more benefit, including the legislature. They should have given a bit more benefit to workers who have gone out of their comfort zones to revive closing down units by forcing them to pay pay off the debt at market loans, they ditch the workers. But in any case, that said and done, the main purpose of this video is to stress the point, and I'm not saying something new. It's an old remedy which was always there back even in back in 18th century, and I'm just trying to modernize this 18th century concept and bring it into 21st century. The concept is of trust. Now, what is a trust? Now, there are many kinds of trust, but trust basically in its simplest form is when one person says that I own this property, this piece of property, maybe land or maybe an object, a very valuable object, say an expensive ancient artifact or something like that. Like I own the legal title of this property, of this thing, but I am holding this for the benefit of my brother or my son or someone else. Like one person says that he has a property, but he owns that even though he owns that property, he's keeping that property for the benefit of someone else. So the legal title, the legal ownership of that property remains with that person, but the beneficial title, the title in equity, belongs to the beneficiary of that property. To explain this more, let's take all the four kinds of trust that exist today. One is the express trust, which I've just given an example. One person says that I'm holding this property for benefit of someone. Express trusts are created by the person themselves. So like say a wealthy couple may decide to put all the property in a trust and say that our kids are the beneficiaries of this trust in case anything was to happen to us. Or that's an express trust. Or say a grandfather says that I own this piece of land, but all the income coming from that land I give the beneficial owner of this this land to my grandson or granddaughter. So in that case, the legal owner of that land is still the grandfather, but the beneficial owner of the income from that land would be that man's grandchildren. So this is the way of creating express trust. And then there are implied trusts. Implied trusts are trusts which court figures out in a particular case, in a particular scenario, depending upon the facts. Let's say a wealthy couple has died in an air crash and they have two really young kids who are below the legal age of taking care of the property. The court may say that okay, a trust will be set up which will manage the properties owned by the couple, and these kids will be taken care of by that trust, and once they get the legal age, these properties will be transferred in their name. So in that case, the trust holds the legal title, giving the beneficial title to the kids until the kids grow up to be the age where they can be the legal owners of that thing. And there are many other times where court implies trust, like in say an example of a marriage. When say a marriage goes for a divorce and the court says that a man has bought a house, although his wife didn't put any money in it, but wife gave up her own career to take care of that man, his kids and his house, the court will say that the man is not the only owner of the house, but he was holding that property in trust for the benefit of both himself and his wife. So that's how sort of alimony law has developed as well. So all these are examples of implied trust. And then there is another form of trust called resulting trust. That say when one person says that I hold this property for, let's say wealthy parents say that we have created this trust and all the benefits will go to our kid. But unfortunately that kid dies. So what happens to the trust property? Because the parents don't have the beneficial title of the property anymore. In that case, court gives them relief in the form of resulting trust. The property that they had put in trust for the benefit of the children, for the child, that returns back to the parents. So that's resulting trust. And the last form of trust that courts identify are called bare trusts. Bare trusts are like bare as in naked. Bare trusts are where people are doing a commercial transaction. There's a contract between two people, and as a part of that contract, money or property is given by one person to another person. So for the duration of that contractual arrangement, if that contractual arrangement falls apart or doesn't go as per the plan, the other person will be holding that property or money on trust of the person who is actually giving it. And there are many other examples of this bare trust, but basically bare trusts are trusts which originate in form of originate as a part of commercial transactions, as a part of contracts. Now I want to propose in this video is an industrial trust. The title of the video is called Takeover Trust, but that was just to set up the ground for this video. The legal concept that I want to put forward is an industrial trust, and it is not something which I am proposing. It is actually what exists on facts. A businessman who has got the money, he invests his money and sets up an industrial unit. So that businessman owns the legal and beneficial title of that industrial unit. But the moment that person hires workforce, the workers become a part of that organization. Now, even though the business owner has put in the capital, he had the legal title, but the moment he hired workers, who even though get paid for doing the work, the workers are still putting their efforts to make that industrial unit productive. The benefit that industrial unit is generating, that is paying both the businessman as well as the workers. It's not just the businessman who's getting money out of what that industrial unit is producing. What the businessman is paying the workers in the form of wages is also a result of that income. So basically, the moment that businessman hired workers, he has actually shared his beneficial ownership with the workers. So even though there's a contractual relation that the workers get paid for their work, but neither the workers are allowed to do anything which will harm the interests of that company, nor the owner is allowed to do anything which will harm the interests of that company knowingly. Of course, unknowingly and innocently, he may make business decisions which may be wrong decisions and cause losses, but knowingly he cannot harm the interest. So there is this trust already there in this relationship, and I would call it industrial trust. And why I want to introduce the concept of trust is that once you have so many people dependent upon an industrial unit for their livelihood, for the fate of their families, a businessman cannot decide anymore on its own that, nah, I'm not making enough profit, I want to make more profit, I'm gonna close this one and shift it to another place. Nah, you can't do that. You own that property in trust. You hold that property in trust for the benefit of people who work in that industry. You share your beneficial interest with them. And the thing is, every time a businessman makes a wrong decision and goes bankrupt, before the company goes into liquidation, or before the company is bound down by a businessman for any reason, courts should intervene and say that now this company is held in industrial trust for the benefit of both the owner and the workers. So if the owner is not willing or capable of running this industrial unit, the first option should go to the workers to decide if they are ready to manage the company, take over the company and manage it, to run it. If the workers decide to do it, they should be given a fair chance to do it. If they fail to run it, or if they decide that they will not be able to sustain that unit on their own, only that's when the court should allow the company to go into liquidation, or to be the assets to be sold for any other reason. Otherwise, as long as that beneficial trust exists, as long as this industrial trust exists, no owner should have right to determine the fate of every other beneficiary dependent upon that industry. That's what I'm proposing, and it's not something new. It's something which has always been there. It just hasn't been identified so far. And if legislatures are really honest and they really care for the people who actually vote for them, this should be a legislative measure as well. Now I'll leave it to the legislature what they want to do with that. Otherwise, myself, as the founding member of Always Shine Australia Party and Vishesh India Party, would make this a part of manifestos of both the parties, that this is something which we would like to see reflected in legislation. Anyway, the choice is up to the people of how they want to live their lives. You could be sorry for the rest of your lives that you are weak sissies. You could rather be screwed than bothered. It's your choice. Or you could do something which will create history that your posterity will be proud of. The choice is always yours. Thanks for watching.